Okay, in this video, we're going to look at the monetary policy stance over the last 2 years. Okay, the last 2 years is what's important because that's what the study guide suggests. So we're looking at what's happened to interest rates in 18 and then in 2019. And we'll also look at what are the main factors impacting the RBA's decision. So basically, the last 3 years, so we're focusing on 2017 to 2018, the cash rate stayed exactly the same. So the cash rate was at 1.5% throughout all of 2018. So it remained with a highly expansionary stance, but it didn't become more expansionary. It maintained its expansionary stance. Then in 2019, the RBA has had, reasons as to why the economy is going not going as well or poorly, and so they've decided to reduce the cash rate on two occasions this year. One in June 2019 to 1.25%, and then again they loosened monetary policy again in July to its current rate, which is 1%. So in terms of some reasons, look, basically, if you look at this chart for 2018 and compare it to 2019, you can see there's a lot more even in 2018, where in 2019, a lot more things are in the supporting lower interest rates category. What we're basically getting at that is that last year there were some reasons to lower interest rates, but there's also some things causing higher inflation, which is a reason to tighten interest rates or to promote or to increase interest rates. And then this year, you've seen there's a lot more things in the lower interest rates category and a lot less in the increased interest rates category. And that's why they've chosen twice to loosen monetary policy in 2019. So to sum up some of the main ones that are occurring in 2018, and again, this year is probably more relevant, so I'll spend more time on that. But basically, you can see a lot of the same things that are happening this year. The slow wage growth. Inflation was within the target range last year, but this year it's below. So again, that's really important as to why it's been loosened this year. The tighter lending standards by banks were relevant last year, so they're giving less people loans. Property prices were starting to fall last year as well. So they were some of the things that were leading to the economy going slower. But there's also some good things in the economy. So the terms of trade had started to rise. People were saving less. Consumer confidence was quite high last year. There was stronger overseas growth last year, where now it started to fall on the back of Trump's trade wars. So Trump's starting to have an impact. The exchange rate was low, and it's still low in 2019 as well, which is a positive factor as well. So a bit both ways. As I said, 2019 is more important, and we've talked about some of these in class, but you need to have a really clear understanding of what are the key factors leading to a loosening at the moment. So the key ones that I'll be focusing on: slow growth in wages is a big thing, inflation below the target range, high levels of underemployment, that's a key one, lots of spare capacity, and therefore encouraging the RBA to be more expansionary. The slow growth in property prices is another key one, growth of less than 2%, and then the global uncertainty caused by Trump's trade wars. And the slow growth in household incomes is another big one, which is sort of synonymous with slow growth in wages. So all these are key things. Some other things, the government being committed to fiscal consolidation has kept inflation down. Strong competition in the retail sector, so increased incentive to be productive, and tighter lending standards by banks. But the ones that I've highlighted there in yellow, the low inflation, the high levels of underemployment, the drop in property prices, and the global uncertainty are four really key factors. There are some things that would lead to higher inflation or signs the economy is going better. So the dollar is quite low, which is stimulating demand for our exports. The commodity prices have increased slightly this year. And then these last two are probably less relevant, but China's trying to implement expansionary policies to boost their economy, which could have a positive impact on Australia. And there's been a bit of a pickup in mining investment this year as on the back of higher commodity prices. But as you can see, a lot more in the left-hand side. Okay, so this is the sort of coming out from the RBA. You can see most of these things are the same thing. They've looked at both the positive and negative indicators, and they've decided to recommend a loosening of the cash rate back in July. And you can see inflation being low, rising unemployment and lots of underemployment, slow economic growth, low wage growth, declining house prices, global trade tensions are all factors leading to a loosening. And then you've got things like high terms of trade, high commodity prices, low Australian dollar. These things are starting to encourage them to increase interest rates, but there's more on the loosened interest rate side. The tax cuts is another one. So the tax cuts won't lead to a tightening because they will increase disposable incomes and could lead to inflationary pressures. So just an example of some types of questions. With reference to current events, explain the reasoning behind the movement in the cash rate in 1819. So in 2018, the cash rate remained at 1.5%. And basically, you want to explain, all right, what were some of the different factors? So there was higher commodity prices, a fall in unemployment, stronger growth rates. We're all signalling that monetary policy should be tightened. But there was also slow wage growth, tightening of lending standards, and the drop in housing prices, which has now been going on for 2 years, all convinced the RBA to maintain their expansionary stance. Then bang, 2019 hit, and essentially the RBA adopted a more expansionary stance. We've lowered the cash rate from 1.5 to 1%. The cash rate now sits in the historically low 1%. And the main reasons for this loosening were things like low levels of inflation in the economy, below 2%, weak wage growth because of lots of spare capacity, the fall in house prices, and the global uncertainty that's occurred because of the Trump trade wars and how that's impacted China. Okay, so another one, outline the RBA's most likely response if the government cuts income taxes and increases government spending. Again, you've got to think, what does this do to inflation? The RBA may be enforced to implement a tightening of monetary policy if the government is going to implement more expansionary policies. Lower taxes are going to boost disposable incomes and could lead to aggregate demand and inflationary pressures, potentially pushing us outside this 2 to 3% target range. And increased government spending on infrastructure may help to boost our productive capacity in the long term and reduce inflationary pressures, but in the short term it may have a increased aggregate demand. So the RBA may have to respond by tightening monetary policy. Explain why the government might claim that the delivery of a surplus budget helps to deliver a more expansionary monetary policy setting. It's a good question. Basically what it's saying is that if the government implements a more contractionary budget, that allows the RBA to focus on stimulating aggregate demand. So if the surplus is full of contractionary policies, like increased taxes, reduced welfare, that'll reduce pressure on inflation, and the RBA can then go and be expansionary as they want without increasing inflationary pressures and getting that inflation outside the target range. Talk about this in the next video.